It is day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
They once lauded him as a music business behemoth, a tycoon, a kingmaker, the man who converted fantasies into chart-topping success. But that illusion was shattered in an instant when Cassie Ventura entered the stand yesterday. In front of a packed courtroom, Diddy's reputation as an invincible icon crumbled. His face drained as Cassie told stories so horrible that even the most hardened court reporters sat transfixed in shock. The same man who had built an empire brick by brick now sat impotent, his emotions revealing shock, fear, and remorse as Cassie exposed every dark, secret corner of their past. Nothing was off bounds. Nothing was held back.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their 10-year relationship.
Walked in there, Rachel. She had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on to the lighting in the room to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak off, the freak off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21. She was young. She didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Sean Diddy Combs walked around the music business like a king for years, and for good cause. He rewrote it, not only took part in the game. From music to fashion, vodka, and even television, he created bad boy records from nothing, turned unassuming talents into chart-topping stars, and made his name into a worldwide brand. Diddy seemed to be the success blueprint, the man who proved hip-hop could be major business, a magnificence, a guiding teacher, a media masterminded person. But right now, all that glitter and glory, it's under debate. If the present legal drama is to be taken at face value, then that sparkling public image could have been nothing more than smoke and mirrors, while magazine covers hailed his empire and people yelled his name on stage, behind closed doors. Cassie Ventura was apparently enduring a nightmare that no one saw coming. The difference was jaw-dropping in the courtroom. Here was a man famed for his faultless appearance. Sharp suits, a great grin, always saying the correct thing when the cameras were rolling. But the picture being painted in court? It showed someone completely different. Someone the public never saw. A stranger hiding behind the famous. On day 2 of the hearing, Diddy came up just as you'd expect, accompanied by an army of top-tier attorneys, looking calm, composed, the very image of a billionaire boss managing business. To anyone observing, he didn't seem like a man facing life-altering claims from a former partner. But that cool, controlled confidence? It didn't last long. Within barely half an hour of Cassie commencing her testimony, the shift in Diddy was evident. His swagger evaporated. His shiny mask started to slip. As Cassie recalled scary events from their relationship, Diddy's legal team leaped into action, interrupting her repeatedly, their protestations seeming almost panicky, as if her words were setting fire to everything he'd constructed. Imagine that. The businessman who pulled the strings behind so many music careers, suddenly visibly unraveling in a courtroom he couldn't control. Witnesses say Diddy became noticeably restless as Cassie spoke. The power dynamic had entirely reversed. And when she finally took the stand, all eyes in the room zeroed down on Diddy. His face reportedly drained of all color, like he was watching his kingdom disintegrate in real time. First, he adjusted his tie, then his cufflinks, then just kept rubbing his hands together. At one point, he started scribbling furious notes and delivering them to his lawyers. So quickly, one attorney had to physically motion for him to slow down. A court reporter characterized it like watching a man understand, maybe for the first time ever, that he was no longer in control of the tale. Another witness in the room stated Diddy appeared physically sick as Cassie quietly, gradually laid bare the realities of their relationship. One witness even recalled seeing him close his eyes repeatedly, as if trying to drown out everything he was hearing. And the bombshells were only just beginning. As Cassie continued, the courtroom braced themselves for what was next. What she said in the hours that followed didn't simply rock Diddy. It caused tremors across the entire music business. Because the particular claims she was ready to level, they might irreversibly taint the legacy Diddy spent his whole life constructing. For once, the man who always curated the narrative, always controlled the picture, was now forced to face a version of the story he couldn't edit and couldn't avoid.
And prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, "He would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down." She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they happened so frequently it eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared that Combs would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. And she's had at times to take, she's taken deep breaths, pausing her testimony, Combs appearing to be listening pretty passively with his hands in his lap at the defense table there.
And at some point in time, she actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, "I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs and I really did love him."
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced as well.
She's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and said, and she even said, you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. But she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, "I know, you don't want to do it." And she said, "Oh, no, well, it's not that." But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
When Cassie Ventura took the witness stand, the entire courtroom froze. You could feel the tension tighten like a rope. Thick, oppressive quiet, where even the sound of a breath felt loud. Everyone knew this day was inevitable. But no one, not even Diddy's high-powered legal team, was completely prepared for the fury she was about to unleash. After years of silence, of burying her truth under fear and control, Cassie was finally ready to speak. And when she did, the courtroom hung on her every word. She didn't start with bombshells. She started tiny. That's what made it chilling. She began by explaining how she first met Diddy at just 19 years old. Back then, he was already a towering figure in the industry, a multimillionaire with global reach. Cassie, on the other hand, was just a teenage model with hopes of breaking into music. The disparity of power wasn't subtle, it was a chasm. And according to her, Diddy understood just how to exploit it. Her words moved forward gently, like the beginning moments of a psychological thriller. Quiet, but with the unmistakable sense that something horrible lay just beneath the surface. She painted a picture of subtle control. At first, it was minor things, allegedly demanding to know her location at all times, showing up uninvited if she dared to go out with friends. Then, it escalated. According to Cassie, he started wielding her music career like a sword. She said he'd shelve her projects if she didn't play by his rules. If she tried to collaborate with musicians he didn't approve of. Allegedly, he made sure such trades never saw sunshine. And just when the courtroom thought it couldn't get more invasive, she withdrew the surveillance accusation. Cassie testified that Diddy reportedly planted tracking software on her phone. She reported occasions when he would phone her within minutes of landing somewhere, already knowing her exact location. That wasn't intuition, she claimed. That was tech-fueled control. Then followed the emotional solitude. According to her, he gradually drove her away from anyone who would encourage her to break free. Friends, mentors, even family. One by one, the ties dissolved, until Diddy was the only one left in her world. The courtroom was rocked. The court had to suspend proceedings 3 separate times to restore order. Why? Because Diddy, usually the model of public composure, was obviously unraveling. He shook his head in bewilderment, whispered frantically to his attorneys, and made faces the jury couldn't ignore. Each time the judge cautioned him, he'd quiet down, but only for a moment. It was like witnessing a man who's always been in control, slowly discovering he's not anymore. And then, the tipping point. Cassie pulled out her phone. She handed it to her attorney, and within seconds, devastating evidence lighted up the courtroom screen. Text messages and emails that dated back years. Diddy's face plummeted. He looked stunned, completely blindsided. He never expected her to keep receipts. There they were, communications where he purportedly apologized following violent occurrences. Messages with thinly veiled threats concerning her career if she ever spoke out. Messages that directly contradicted the public image his PR department had meticulously built over the years. But that wasn't the climax. That was merely the prelude. Cassie's testimony went into darker territory. She began detailed years of alleged physical abuse. She spoke about being thrown into walls during furious discussions. She detailed a frightening moment when, according to her, he forced her down a flight of stairs at a rented Miami property. And then came the most unsettling part. Cassie spoke about many incidences where she alleges he choked her, to the point where she nearly blacked out. According to her, he wouldn't stop until her body became limp. You could feel the courtroom alter. Jurors were obviously shaken. An older woman brushed away tears. A male jury averted his eyes from Diddy after some of the most disturbing statements. Even the most battle-hardened reporters in the room, people who've covered murder trials and political takedowns, admitted they weren't ready for what Cassie lay bare that day. And all of this? It was just the setup. Because what followed next, the hotel incident, would send shockwaves far beyond that courtroom and crack this case wide open.
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that's when she got emotional. When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm going to be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's going to be interesting to watch is, you know, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about, was this her choice, or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
I really thought I wasn't going to make it out alive that night, Cassie remarked, her voice wavering as the courtroom lapsed into a heavy stillness. Every eye in the room fastened on her as she began to disclose a truth that had been buried for years, something that the tabloids had missed. She was talking about an explosive incident at the Four Seasons Hotel, an event so dark, so closely guarded, that not a single headline had ever hinted at it. Not the press, not the gossip blogs, not even her closest fans knew. Until now. Cassie admitted she'd kept the horrible incident to herself all these years, not out of remorse, but out of sheer horror. Fear that coming out might harm her job, fear for her bodily safety, and above all, dread that no one would trust her over someone as powerful, as untouchable as Diddy. But there she was, seated on the witness stand, her voice calm now. She wasn't hiding anymore. The truth was coming out, and it was chilling. What began as a flashy industry after-party swiftly degenerated into something out of a nightmare. Cassie testified that everything changed when Diddy observed her conversing with another music executive. The changeover was instant. His grin evaporated, his eyes clouded. Then, without surprise, he grasped her arm so fiercely it left deep bruises, and leaned in to mutter venomous threats, all while retaining a calm, smiling expression in front of the throng. But behind the scenes, pure horror. Cassie remembered being hauled through the hotel lobby, dragged toward the elevators in full view of guests and workers. She was sobbing, attempting to get free, generating such a commotion that a hotel security guard came in. But when the guard realized who was doing the pulling, he backed off. All he asked was, "Is everything okay?" And when Diddy coolly responded yes, the guard turned and went away. "He didn't even look at me," Cassie told the court. "He didn't ask if I was okay." Then came the tipping point, the proof no one expected. Her lawyer exhibited a batch of images Cassie had shot the next morning. Not staged, not filtered, just raw, gut-wrenching photographs captured in a hotel bathroom mirror. Bruised arms, a busted lip, red markings across her neck. They weren't polished or professional. They were unsteady, raw and real, making them all the more unsettling. Cassie stated she took the images because she was confident no one would believe her without proof. Diddy's legal team scrambled, using every technicality in the book to keep the photographs from being shown. They fought over authenticity, claimed the photos were irrelevant, argued they were submitted too late. But the judge wasn't having it. Objection after objection was overruled. The photos were exhibited. And the jury's reaction? Devastating. One female juror gasped and covered her mouth. Two male jurors literally turned their heads away, unwilling to look. Another juror scribbled furiously in her notepad, her hand visibly shaking. This wasn't simply new information. It was a courtroom earthquake. Nobody had seen it coming. There was no mention of this occurrence in any previous testimony or papers. Diddy's lawyers were utterly blindsided. You could see the panic on their faces. And just when the tension couldn't grow much greater, Cassie unleashed another surprise. She stated that during his violent rage, Diddy tossed a champagne bottle at her, missing her head by inches as it shattered against the hotel room wall. He didn't stop there. She claimed he went on a rampage, smashing a lamp, tossing furniture, punching a hole through the bathroom door in uncontrolled fury. But the saddest aspect of her testimony? Cassie stated he wouldn't let her leave. For nearly 48 hours, she was locked in that hotel suite, her phone taken, her pleads unanswered. And every time she sought to contact out for aid, she was met with chilling threats. As Cassie wrapped up this part of her evidence, the entire audience focused their gaze to one man, Diddy. And in that moment, when all eyes landed on him, his expression, or lack of it, became the image that would haunt headlines, define the trial, and maybe influence the course of his legacy forever.
There was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people? Are you familiar with them?
So the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her.
The defense hasn't even got a chance to, that might change based on the timing, but, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today, she broke down on that court.
I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail. This was not coercion. This was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
It was a moment no one in that courtroom will ever forget. Diddy, who built his empire on his ability to remain calm under pressure, utterly lost it in front of everyone. The facade broke and shattered, and what was underneath was not pretty. You have to appreciate that this is a man who has spent decades honing his public image. The smooth-talking businessman, the calm, cool mogul, the man who never shows you his sweat. However, as Cassie's evidence became increasingly damaging, her carefully kept facade began to unravel. Court reporters who have covered hundreds of celebrity cases claim they've never seen anything like it. Diddy physically morphed before their eyes from the confident business titan who entered that morning to a man who appeared cornered and desperate as the afternoon progressed. With each fresh charge Cassie made, he appeared to shrink in his chair. His legal staff was working overtime. Someone seated close behind them told me that Diddy's main attorney kept putting his hand on Diddy's arm to attempt to calm him down. At one point, one of the lawyers allegedly handed him a paper that read, "Stay calm," in all capital letters. But it didn't help. When Cassie detailed an event at his Hampton home, Diddy threw his hand down on the table in frustration. He hit it so hard that the boom reverberated throughout the courtroom. The judge quickly halted proceedings and warned him, "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself, I'll have you removed from this courtroom." At one point, it appeared like he would be dismissed from his own trial. Throughout Cassie's testimony, observers noticed Diddy repeatedly shaking his head and saying, "That's not true," whenever she described anything particularly hurtful. It was as if he forgot there was a jury monitoring his every move. According to one courtroom observer, it appeared that a man who had never been called out before suddenly realized he could not control the narrative. The power shift in the room was amazing. Throughout their relationship, Diddy allegedly had complete control over Cassie's life. He couldn't stop her from saying the truth. He couldn't cut her microphone. He couldn't get security to remove her. He couldn't get it past his public relations team. He only had to sit there and take it. The real breaking point occurred when Cassie mentioned threats. She testified that Diddy allegedly threatened her family if she ever told anyone about what transpired between them. And then came the shocking revelation. She had recordings. Her lawyer played audio recordings of his threats in court. Diddy had a complete breakdown at that point. He leapt out of his chair and shouted directly at Cassie, "You know that wasn't how it happened." His legal team aggressively grabbed him and attempted to bring him back into his seat. 3 of his lawyers had to restrain him as he attempted to speak over the courtroom tape. The court immediately called for a recess, but the damage had already occurred. Everyone witnessed it. The jurors, reporters, court officials, and the guy who built his image on being untouchable had all revealed how touchable he truly was. As they led Diddy out for recess, he appeared to be a completely different person from the one who had walked in that morning. The mask was removed, and what was revealed was not pleasant. Just when everyone believed they'd heard everything, the true bombshell dropped. Cassie had evidence that nobody saw coming. Not the judge, not the jury, and certainly not Diddy. For years, she had secretly gathered evidence of what she said transpired during their relationship. Text messages, emails, and images were all saved in different locations where Diddy couldn't access or remove them. When Cassie mentioned that she had received text messages from other celebrities who had personally witnessed Diddy's actions, the courtroom became silent. These weren't simply random industry professionals either. According to court transcripts, they were some of Diddy's closest friends and business associates who had been in his inner circle for years and had witnessed things at private parties and backstage at events that the general public was unaware of. Diddy's expression said it all. When Cassie mentioned the celebrity witnesses, someone in the gallery described him as physically ill. His legal team instantly stood up, protesting loudly, and demanded a sidebar with the judge. They contended that these messages should not be included as evidence because they were hearsay and were not properly filed during discovery. The judge wouldn't have it. After studying the texts in private, he returned to the courtroom and overruled all objections, describing the messages as very significant to the case and allowing them to be admitted into evidence. That decision alone forced Diddy to bury his face in his hands. He knew what was coming. Messages from well-known figures emerged on the courthouse screens one after another. Cassie received a text from a renowned rapper following a Grammy after-party. "You okay? What I witnessed tonight was not right. You are welcome to stay with me if necessary." A female pop singer wrote, "I've known him for 15 years, and I've never seen him act like that around anyone else. This is not typical. Kindly call me." Most damning were messages from a longtime producer who had collaborated with Diddy for decades. He texted Cassie after seeing an event in a studio. "I can't be around this any longer. I told him to seek therapy. Call me when you are secure." These communications contradicted Diddy's public statements that there was no evidence of inappropriate behavior and that Cassie was twisting private concerns. Now the court could see that people had witnessed instances, were concerned, and had gone out to assist her. Then Diddy sent his own messages. Screenshots showed him acknowledging incidences through texting. "I'm sorry for last night. You know how I behave when I drink. This won't happen again." Another text from him stated, "Just name what you need to make this right. You can get a new car, an apartment, or whatever you want." A third communication series appeared to be attempts to keep occurrences quiet by making financial offers. "My lawyer can prepare the paperwork tomorrow. 2 million. Clean break. You don't discuss anything from the past 5 years." As these messages were read out, something interesting occurred in the gallery. Several others, who had arrived with Diddy that morning, including members of his entourage who were sitting behind him in support, quietly stood up and exited the courtroom. They slipped out one by one, unable to remain seated while the evidence piled up. By the end of this portion of the evidence, Diddy was nearly alone at his table, with only his legal team. The show of support he had walked in with that morning had vanished. The unexpected evidence changed everything. As day 2 came to a close, the man who had entered court as music's untouchable monarch stepped out, defeated. The security personnel surrounding him were unable to shield him from what had just occurred in the courtroom. The empire he spent decades constructing could be unraveling in real time. Cassie Ventura did more than simply tell her tale today. She may have rewritten Diddy's entire legacy. The facts, testimonies, and recordings all presented a picture that no one can forget. The question isn't whether Diddy can win the case anymore. The question is whether his reputation will ever recover from what the world witnessed in that courtroom today.